You're watching BBC News. Let's go and take a look at all the latest business headlines for our viewers here in the UK and around the world. With inflation topping 10% here in the UK, independent retailers, they put out a call for help. Just how bad is the situation? We're going to know in a few hours when the latest retail sales numbers are published. Renters, they're being priced out of the market by rapidly rising rates. So, are any solutions to be found? And is work from home on Fridays killing the after-work drinks? The trade body for bars and nightclubs think it may threaten over 250,000 jobs. Yes, a very warm welcome to all the business news. Let's start here in the UK because where skyrocketing inflation is causing certainly big problems for retailers. Just how big? Well, as I mentioned, it's going to be revealed in a few hours when we get those latest retail numbers. That, of course, for the month of July. But if we look back, sales fell 0.1% month on month for the month of June. That was actually slightly better than expected. The results as rising energy and fuel prices dented consumer confidence. Now that inflation topping just over 10%, the British Independent Retail Association is calling for 100% rate relief to be introduced for smaller retailers and an energy cap price, for businesses. Let's get more. Andrew Goodacre is the big boss of the British Independent Retailers Association and joins us. Good morning to you, Andrew. Thanks for joining us. So you're calling for these for the smaller retailers a rate relief and energy price cap for business in general. Just talk about energy. Energy prices have gone through the roof. Just how much is that hurting our retailers?
Oh, good morning. Well, it's so significant. Only Wednesday, I was talking to a retailer, perfectly successful business, and they were told that their energy was rising 500%. No choice, no room for negotiation. And on top of other increases they faced, either in the supply chain or with labour increasing and business rates having increased by 100% this year, then there's a total tsunami of costs coming through the business at a time when consumer confidence is at a low ebb. And so we're seeing less money come through the tills as well. So it's a real toxic mixture for businesses on the high street.
But just briefly, Andrew, I mean, viewers around the world here and here in the UK, their jaws would drop when you talk about an increase of 500%. That's not sustainable.
No, it isn't. We totally agree, and that's why we've asked the government to step in on this. And in fairness, we were seeing increases of 300% as long ago as last October. So this isn't necessarily a new problem, and we felt for a long time that intervention and support along the lines of what was done during the COVID period would be necessary, and certainly is necessary as we approach the autumn-winter time.
Again, just briefly, if you can, I mean, are you seeing a cut in consumer spending? I'm wondering what you're expecting in a couple of hours when we get those retail numbers.
Yeah, across nearly all sectors of retail, the exceptions in the past have been clothing and holiday wear and items for weddings have stood up quite well over the summer. But generally speaking, we've seen declines. And I would be amazed if we didn't see a further decline when the figures are released later today. Consumers are now, because of the uncertainty of energy prices in the future, consumers are definitely reining back on their discretionary expenditure.
Okay. Andrew, a pleasure having you. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. Okay, Andrew Goodacre joining us there. The COVID-19 pandemic and the war, of course, in Ukraine, they've caused widespread disruptions to trade and investment. No country, region or industry has been left untouched. And global trade partnerships, they're changing. On Thursday, the US announced that they will begin formal trade negotiations with Taiwan, with talks focusing on trade facilitation, digital trade and anti-corruption standards. So, how has the war in Ukraine changed that whole, trading picture globally? And are new trade alliances being formed because of it? Well, let's get more. Stefan Legger is economist at St Gallen University and joins us. Stefan, good to have you with us as well. Stefan, I talk about trade, global trade on my weekly show an awful lot, especially since the war in Ukraine. There are alliances forming, aren't there? I mean, we are looking at a change in this trading pattern.
Yes, we do see that. And what we lacked to understand for quite some time is that we have globalization, we have more and more international trade, we have a specialization. Every country does what it's very good at, but we forgot a little bit that this is all based on the idea that countries can trust each other to supply each other. And what we've seen with the war in Ukraine, but also with COVID, with the financial crisis, with rising protectionism, the US-China trade war, is that trust in other countries is eroding. And now you're looking for countries that you can trust at least more than the current supplier. And so this underlying trust is shifting and eroding, and that leads to new alliances. Countries look for alternative suppliers, and they want to diversify the supply and even ramp up domestic production.
And of course, one part of the war we know is this energy crisis that many in Europe are certainly facing, other parts of the world. So on that note, do you think, Stefan, that trade alliances will be linked to energy supplies?
Yes, definitely. International trade was always characterized to a large extent by energy transfer from one country to the other. But energy used to be a dirty industry. It's still a dirty industry, but increasingly it's getting more importance. And we realize that the shift to green energy, to a green economy, is taking longer than expected. And we need supply of energy, not just from time to time, but we need it every year. And so we will look out for new suppliers, reliant suppliers. And to some extent, we reduce the emphasis on ethics. Think about Saudi Arabia, supposed to be a pariah state, and now it's negotiating with France and the US. So energy is driving new alliances, yes.
And Stefan, let me end on this, because you mentioned, of course, the supply chain disruptions. Do you think that's forcing some nations to look inwards in terms of, hey, we're just going to have to make more stuff at home? I mean, it's not going to happen overnight, but they're just going to have to make more stuff on their own.
Exactly. It's not going to happen overnight. But think about just one case. Taiwan is coming up, and increasingly a hot topic. And there is the prospect that there could be a conflict, a disruption. And Europe, the US, and elsewhere realizes just how dependent we are on just one company, TSMC. So the US passed the CHIPS Act. Europe is ramping up subsidies for chips production. So yeah, a lot of regions, a lot of countries will seek domestic production. But yeah, this is going to be more expensive, and it's not going to happen overnight.
Indeed. Stefan, a real pleasure, my friend. Thanks very much for your time. Have a great weekend. Stephen Legger joining me there. Do you know, 4 in 10 young people, they're spending more than 30% of their income on rent. That's according to new figures. Anything above 30%, it's classed by housing experts as, well, simply unaffordable. But this new data shows that the number of people under 30 paying that rate has reached a 5-year high. Our Consumer Affairs correspondent, Coletta Smith, has this exclusive story.
No one likes paying rent, but right now people under 30, like Mia, are paying through the nose.
My tenancy's ending soon, and looking for new tenancies is just more and more expensive. It's disheartening because it feels like you're just going to be stuck in rental properties forever, but everyone's in the same position.
It's extortionate.
What were you paying then?
It's $8.50 between the two of us, and also the bills, which have obviously crippled me. I've literally just moved back home 2 weeks ago, so there you go.
Although the data show the most unaffordable areas for young people are in London, many of the areas that have seen the biggest change are other towns and cities. Rotherham, Bolton, Dudley, Slough, Salford, Walsall, Nottingham, Trafford and Peterborough have seen some of the biggest increases. Young people spend more of their incomes on rent than any other age group. So with rents going up so quickly at the same time that incomes are not, it's younger people who are being squeezed in the middle. And that's before they've even started paying for any of their other bills. In Dudley, estate agents say with so few homes coming up, it's tempting for tenants to offer more than the listed price.
Under 30s are struggling at the moment. I can relate to them, so I do try and sympathise a little bit, but at the same time they shouldn't be offering £100 more or £50 more if they cannot meet that requirement. But then if they don't, they're going to miss out on that property. So it's a hard situation.
That's the conundrum that Io faced when she got her flat. Did you find that lots of people were looking for, around every flat that you were looking at?
Exactly. Sometimes you just have to probably offer more or offer to pay up front or something just to get it.
But for some, moving back home does have a silver lining.
I like living with my mum, so yeah, I'll stay there until as long as I can.
Yeah, my washing's all done.
Yeah.
Food cuts, it's all good.
Coletta Smith, BBC News in Salford.
Grow up, boys. A severe drought in southern parts of China. It's becoming the latest headwind faced by the world's second largest economy. A drop in water levels in the Yangtze River is certainly curbing electricity generation, which in turn is forcing factories to shut down. Our Asia business reporter Zhao De Silva is standing by in Singapore. And Zhao, good to see you, my friend. Tell us more. What's going on?
Good to see you, Aaron. Well, the Yangtze River is not just China's longest river, it's also one of Asia's largest waterways. And water levels there are at their lowest level for this time of the year. In Sichuan province, which is one of China's most populous provinces, the water levels at hydropower reservoirs are down by as much as half this month. And that's a province that relies on hydropower to meet about 80% of its energy needs. So it's perhaps unsurprising that we're hearing about power cuts in some cities. We're hearing about factories shutting down and even office buildings switching off their air conditioning. A reminder that it's August, there's a heat wave there, so demand for air conditioning is really spiking. Some of the companies being affected are makers of solar panels, they're makers of cement and other products, and we're even hearing about an upstream impact on large automakers like Tesla, which have large factories elsewhere in China. Those reports saying that Tesla may find it hard to maintain current levels of production because some of its suppliers of auto parts in Sichuan are being affected by those shutdowns. This, of course, is causing a great deal of concern for the Chinese leadership. The Chinese President Xi Jinping telling the local authorities that they need to ensure that normal life can resume and that normal levels of industrial production are maintained. A reminder that the Chinese economy was already facing a slowdown. That's been caused, of course, by the strict zero-COVID approach to the pandemic and by the downturn in the property sector. So this drought really adding to the headaches that the Chinese leadership is facing right now.
Yeah, and you said it. I mean, it's the last thing China needed. In fact, it's the last thing the global economy needs. Zhao, we're going to leave it there. Thanks for the update. We'll talk to you soon. Let's just go and touch on some of the other business news, making headlines around the world. Hey, the Turkish currency, the lira, it's fallen in value again after the central bank unexpectedly slashed its interest rate by 1%. Inflation in Turkey is running at a 24-year high at nearly, listen to this, inflation, 80%. Forecast to get worse, in fact. The bank said that the rate cut was an attempt to cool these price rises. Of course, this is a move that goes against the conventional economic wisdom. The Thai Commerce Minister says a request by producers to increase the cost of instant noodles by a third is too much. The minister is evaluating a proposal from 5 companies to put up the government-controlled price from 6 to 8 baht, or about 20 US cents. The noodles, of course, they're consumed by many poor people in Thailand and have remained at the same price for 14 years. But the companies say they're experiencing soaring production costs. Hey, stay with us on BBC News. Still to come. Is work from home on Fridays killing the after-work drinks? The trade body for bars and nightclubs thinks it may threaten over 250,000 jobs. I'll see you shortly.
Washington, the world's most political city, is today assessing the political health of the world's most powerful man.
Indeed, I did have a relationship with Ms. Lewinsky that was not appropriate. In fact, it was wrong.
In South Africa, 97 people have been killed today in one of the worst days of violence between rival black groups. Over the last 10 days, 500 have died.
Czechoslovakia must be free! Czechoslovakia must be free! Czechoslovakia must be free!
Russia is observing a national day of mourning for the 118 submariners who died on board the Kursk.
We all with them now, in our hearts.
The Pope has celebrated Mass before a congregation of more than 2.5 million people in his hometown of Krakow.
Stay with us, chanted this ocean of humanity.
Oh, yeah.
Well, joked the Pope, so you want me to desert Rome?
BBC World News. Let's go and take a look at the latest headlines. A fire at a Russian ammunition depot is being blamed for the evacuation of 2 border villages as explosions are reported at an airfield in Russian-occupied Crimea. A US judge has unsealed documents that authorize the FBI to search Donald Trump's Florida home. Now, for you sports fans out there, you may have recently been enjoying watching, of course, the Women's European Football Championship. In fact, more of you than ever before were watching with record audiences in the stadiums and on the screens. The event, it's just the latest marker in the rise of women's sport. And that growth offers serious potential for companies looking to get involved, with research showing that fans of women's sport are willing to spend more money and more time with associated brands than those fans of men's sports. For this week, my show, Talking Business Weekly, I've been speaking to the boss of Sports Innovation Lab, Angela Ruggiero. She explained just how women's sports fans are hungry for more.
The demand is there. There's a lot of fans that are going online. They're downloading apps. They're following athletes directly. They're trying to get their hands on any content they can. And a lot of that comes in the digital format. But what that's showing us is that there's a demand out there. And when the supply side of the market, when linear TV puts it on TV, the typical broadcast view, those same fans are going to tune in, and more so. So a lot of numbers being thrown out in terms of, ratings and the amount of people that watch the Euros. But what we've been studying is all these digital interactions that to us show there's a massive, massive audience that's untapped and wants to spend more time and more money on the women's side of the game.
We know research from your company and others show how fans of women's sport might be seriously good news, certainly for brands and sponsors, and more likely to buy into associated products and spend more time with them. What's behind those findings?
So what we found in our research is that it's about the quality of the fan versus the quantity of fan. Most male sports are driving enormous eyeballs. Again, think the Euro men's side of the sport. Everyone expects the ratings to be high, the number of tickets to be sold high. What we're seeing in our research is that while the quantity isn't typically as high on the women's side, the quality is much deeper. So fans of women's sports, which include men and women, but if you follow women's sports, you're spending more money with the brands that sponsor your teams or your leagues. You're watching longer. You're literally spending more time consuming digital and linear content. You're watching longer, which is very valuable in today's age where the consumer, may not have an attention span. No, they're watching longer on the women's side of the equation. They're deeper, more loyal, more engaged fans. So if you're thinking about growth, going after the women's market is more valuable because, again, these consumers are deeper, they're more engaged, they're going to spend more money, and that's big money if you can grow that fan base.
And, of course, you can see more of that interview with the Olympic gold medal winner, Angela Ruggiero, on, there it is, my show, Talking Business Weekly with Aaron Heslehurst. It's on this weekend on the BBC News Channel at 3:30 p.m. on Saturday afternoon, if you're staying indoors. And for the rest of you around the world on BBC World News, the first airing is at 23:30 GMT on Saturday. The entire show, all about the business and women in sport. I've also got the head of football for the England football, for the FA, the Football Association. So check it out. It's a cracker. The US housing market appears to be slowing down. Numbers out on Thursday showed that in July, the number of existing homes sold was lower than any month since November of 2015. Samira Hussain sent us this from New York.
The pandemic may have disrupted large parts of the U.S. economy, but it caused a boom in housing. And that boom now seems to be over. According to the National Association of Realtors, prices fell slightly between June and July, although they remain at historically high levels. It's in the number of sales that the slowdown is most visible. July was the 6th consecutive month of declines. Now, this is likely to have knock-on effects for the wider economy. Strong home sales tend to drive spending across a range of sectors, from electrical appliances to DIY. Now, the cause of the slowing sales is most likely the Federal Reserve. As it raises interest rates, mortgages are getting more expensive and fewer homes are being sold. So while it won't please everyone, this latest data may be taken as some evidence that the Fed's attempts to get inflation under control are having some effect.
Samira Hussain there. Hey, it's Friday, and if you're working from home today, you're not alone. Did you know Friday, it's the UK's most popular day for working from home, with just 13% of people going into the office. That's according to a survey for this week from consultancy Advanced Workplace Associates. The return to the office after the pandemic has been slow, as we know, and employees say ending the working week at home, it just gives them a better work-life balance and saves them certainly money on travel. But the shift, it's hitting city centre hospitality businesses pretty hard, with Friday after works drinks pretty much fizzling out. Let's get more on this. Michael Kill is the big boss, the CEO of Nighttime's Industry Association. It's a trained body of nightclubs, bars, music and entertainment venues. I think you represent something like 1,400 venues. Michael, great to have you with us, my friend. Just paint us a brief picture, if you can, about, well, all these people working from home on Friday. What is that doing to the industry?
Well, as you can appreciate, it's been the mainstay of British culture for people to go out after work on a Friday evening or go to lunch in the daytime if they're working from the office. And as you can appreciate, during the pandemic, many people work from home, and it had a huge impact on the hospitality sector in particular, where people weren't taking up those lunches. And particularly on Friday nights, as you've suggested, was a huge night for those city pubs, bars and restaurants. And with people working from home on a Friday, that's had a huge dent in the revenue for these businesses ongoing. And definitely since the pandemic, it's that behavioural change has without a doubt impacted on revenue coming in at a time when we really, really need the revenue to recover.
But that said, Michael, we're talking about Fridays, but I'm looking at some numbers here, because it's not just Fridays, is it? I mean, staff are now going into offices on average, it says here, 1.5 days a week compared to 4 days roughly before pandemic. So this lack of footfall is almost decimating parts of the industry. I mean, are you expecting to see businesses fail?
Without a doubt. I mean, you're aware the current cost inflation situation is now mounting up to become unsustainable. Many businesses are experiencing something like 30% increase in costs. So with the downturn in trade in some of those city centre pubs that rely so heavily on workers and employees coming and taking lunch or going for an afternoon pint or in the evening, where that revenue has been lost right the way across the week has been a real challenge. But in particularly Friday, because it is one of those big earners for us. I think the challenge that we have overall is there's just unsurmountable costs coming in, tripling of energy costs. We've seen up to 600% increase in energy costs, business interruption insurance over 100%, and they're still suffering from legacy debts of per unit an average of about 133k. So many of the SME businesses, independent businesses, are at huge risk of failing at the moment, and subsequently that means jobs being lost also.
Yeah, it certainly does. I mean, it's like a dog chasing its tail, right, for the economy here. Yeah, I was talking to about the retailers and those retail numbers coming out today at the top of the program, and you mentioned 600%. I mean, our guest mentioned 500% increase in energy prices, and as I said to him, that is not sustainable. Nobody can keep up with that.
No, and there are people making decisions on what they're doing with the business every day. Yeah. I think the challenge that we have is the government have been very slow to react. Outgoing administration is reluctant to make decisions, and incoming administration is focused on hustings and over the next couple of weeks. But the crisis is immediate. That's where the issue is, and we need an intervention, or we are going to see businesses lost and jobs. It's going to be horrendous. It's potentially catastrophic for our industry.
Well, I am sorry to hear that, Michael. I've got to leave it there. But listen, thanks for your time. I appreciate it. Have a good weekend. Michael Kill joining us there. Let's go and take a look. We're going to take a look, flash of the markets, how the Asian markets have been faring today. And it's a little bit of a mixed bag. But stocks did swing on Friday. Investors really tried to assess the America's Federal Reserve's plans for, well, what they're doing about lifting interest rates, of course, to fight inflation. And then we've had some mixed numbers and differing opinions by bank officials providing very little clarity. So it's leaving a lot of market traders sort of just which way to go, But many suggest, of course, that's what the markets did yesterday in the US on Wall Street. I got to go. Follow me on Twitter, tweet me. I'll tweet you back. You can get me a BBC hour, and I'll be back at the top of the hour with news. I'll see you then.